Chair recognizes for an invite resolution Representative Susan Holmes. Representative Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I am especially proud today to recognize a wonderful longtime friend, Clisby Clark, who wrote and performed this song along with another one. His Hunker Down Georgia Dogs and The Bulldog Bite were two of the most wonderful UGA fight songs. Now, when I first met Clisby Clark 54 years ago, he was a very sophisticated young man who was a freshman at Georgia Tech. Grew up in Marshallville, Georgia, graduated from Pitch County High School, spent a year at the North Avenue Trade School, and then made what was probably one of the most important decisions of his life, and that was to transfer to the University of Georgia. Where he spent a glorious career, and he immediately became immersed in campus life, became a very avid Bulldog fan, wrote these great songs, found this wonderful wife, and when he finished his career in Athens, got his degree, went on to live in Cincinnati and Connecticut, and moved. Then the lure of his Georgia roots brought him back to Atlanta. Clisby is an icon in the advertising field. He's been so successful in the hospitality, but to me, the music field is where he really has excelled. And I will tell you, when we were all students at the University of Georgia, Clisby Clark had a band, and he and his band played the good old 50s and 60s songs that some of you remember, like the Coasters and the Drifters and the Chuck Berrys and Ray Charles songs. They went all over the Southeast playing at Dale balls and fraternity parties. And then when he and his family moved back to Atlanta in the 70s, Clisby became very active, very, very active. In fact, he now serves as chairman of the board of the Hospitality Business Network Foundation. But before that, Clisby had an illustrious campaign with McCann Erickson. He developed the first advertising campaign for the city of Atlanta, Look at Atlanta Now, the city's campaign for the 1996 Centennial Olympics Games. Then he won the Phoenix Award from the Atlanta Chamber, the Silver Medal Award from the Atlanta Advertising, and was inducted in the 2009 Atlanta Hospitality Hall of Fame. Clisby Clark is a wonderful Georgian. He's a wonderful friend of the university. He's a super good dog. And before I ask the clerk to read his resolution, I want to introduce his family to you because, of course, they are very special. His wife Bunny, his daughters here are Catherine and James Buckner, with their children Lucy and Clark, Caroline Boggs and her daughter Kendall, and good friends Sam Welborn and Jimmy Fluker are with us also, and we're so pleased. Please rise and thank them for this group. Now, would you read the resolution, please, Mr. Clerk?
House Resolution 452 by Representative Holmes of 129, a resolution commending Mr. G. Clisby Clark and inviting Mr. Clark to appear before the House of Representatives at a date and upon a time to be designated by the Speaker of this House.
My time.
Yes, your time.
Mr. Speaker, I'll do it. First, I want to thank all of you, and particularly Representative Susan Holmes, for setting this whole thing up. I'm truly honored and grateful for your efforts, Susan. Please allow me just a couple of minutes to give credit where credit is due. The real impetus for me writing two Bulldog songs came from a great Georgia Bulldog and a former member of the Senate, Georgia State Senate, Bob Argo. Bob Argo from Athens, great Bulldog, came to me in April of 1980, and he said, "Clisby, I think the Bulldogs need something new." And not only that, but we have been successful in recruiting this kid from Johnson County High School down in Wrightsville, and we don't really know what's going to happen, but Clisby, I think he could really be the real thing. The rest, of course, is history. The phrase hunker down was not very common in 1980. But once I convinced Coach Dooley that it didn't mean anything nasty, and we finally got Larry Munson on board, we were really off and running, along with Herschel. Ladies and gentlemen, making money from these two Bulldog songs was never my motivation. It's also a damn good thing. I have, however, gotten $1 million worth of fun from these two projects over the years. This past year, I took my son-in-law and my two grandsons, Charlie and Sammy, they're 12 and 10, they're from Richmond, Virginia, and I took them to watch the Bulldogs beat the University of Tennessee in Sanford Stadium. And after 32 years, the band, the Georgia Redcoat Band, started playing Hunker Down Harry Dogs, and my two grandsons looked up at me and said, "Papa, that's your song." Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot put a value on that. Thank you for this honor, and thank you again, Susan. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you, Don.
House will come back to order. The chair recognizes for an invite resolution the Chairman of the Natural Resources and Environment Committee, Chairman Lynn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I come to you today with bragging rights for Georgia. We have with us the United States of America. Let me say that again. The National Middle School Principal of the Year. You cannot get a better superlative for the state of Georgia, our county, Coweta County. And so for just a couple minutes, we're going to tell you a little bit about her, but stop and think, what makes an area so successful? A dedicated person, a dedicated school board, and by the way, the school board members take no salary. Stop and think about that. The whole focus of the principals, the administration, the teachers, the school board, the community, the families, is all on one thing: students. And the clerk will, in a minute, read the caption of the bill, but I wanted to tell you that our whole delegation is here. Senator Mike Crane, Representative Matt Ramsey, Representative David Stover, Representative Carl Von Epps. This is a bragging moment for us today, but it's also something we need to stop and think. Out of thousands of middle school principals in our country, here's number one. We're number one. Dr. Laurie Barron.
Thank you.
I need to ask the clerk to read the caption first. Thank you.
House Resolution 466 by Representative Smith of the 70th, Representative Epps of the 132nd, Representative Ramsey of the 72nd. A resolution congratulating Dr. Laurie Barron on being named 2013 MetLife NASSP National Middle Level Principal of the Year, and inviting her to be recognized by this House of Representatives at a date and time to be designated by the Speaker of the House.
Thank you, Clerk. And Dr. Laurie Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, for having me here today, especially to the Coweta County delegation, our representatives and senator who are here to support us today, and Lynn Smith for making this honor possible. I'm thrilled today to have with me my superintendent of schools, Dr. Steve Barker, and our communications director, Mr. Dean Jackson, also my husband Daniel and our daughter Emma. It is an honor to represent Smoky Road Middle School and Coweta County, the state of Georgia, and our nation. I'm very grateful to MetLife and NASSP for making this possible, but I will tell you the greatest part of this honor has been letting others see the high quality and caliber of teaching that takes place in the Coweta County school system on a daily basis, supported by a board that believes in parent involvement, believes in teacher voice, and listens to what's best for the classroom students. So thank you again for this honor and for having me here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Glanton for an invite resolution. Representative Glanton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, I'm joined today by my colleagues on the Clayton County delegation, Representatives Jordan, Scott, Mabra, Douglas, Waits, and Stovall. And we are here this morning to honor Chairman Elgin Bell for his service to the Clayton County community and to the great state of Georgia. Before I go on to recognize Chairman Bell, I would like to recognize his daughter, who is joined with him today, Ms. Elizabeth Bell Thompson. Won't you help welcome her to the House of Representatives? I would ask now that the clerk read the resolution.
House Resolution 413 by Representatives Glanton, 75th, Representative Stovall, 74th, Representative Douglas, 78th, Representative Waits, 60th, Representative Mabra, the 63rd, and others. A resolution recognizing, commending Chairman Elgin Bell and inviting the Chairman Bell to appear before the House of Representatives and for other purposes.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to recognize and to honor a public servant and, frankly, a good friend of mine, a man who has given over 50 years of his life to public service, a man who served in the Clayton County Commission as the commission chair for the 8 years. He served on numerous boards, civic organizations and such, and he was very active and led of various groups of the Atlanta Regional Commission. But his heart has always been and continues to be with children and seniors. And while I could go on and on and on about the accolades and achievements and accomplishments of this public servant, I will simply ask you this morning to help me and the delegation of Clayton County welcome and honor the former Clayton County Commission Chairman Elgin Bell.
Good morning, good afternoon, and we'll be gone this evening, I hope. Let me first of all honor the Speaker of the House, Speaker Alston, and the other officials of this great body, and thank Representative Glanton for this high honor. As I sat here, I thought back that this little boy born in Butts County, Georgia, at the hands of a great-grandmother who lived to be 113, and who came to this city while yet in diapers to watch the body of our President Roosevelt as it came by this way. And as a 10-year-old child, I watched the first 8 African-American police officers appointed in the city of Atlanta. Little did I know then that I'd grow up to be their boss. But my mother had something that I would encourage you to do with your children, as I've done with mine. I grew up with a drug problem. She drugged me everywhere she went. And as a result, Elizabeth here is with me. You can see I drag my children everywhere I want. I go. On March 31st, 1961, I became a police officer in a segregated police department in Atlanta and rose to carry every single shield it has to be its chief of police, which I'm honored to have served the men and women of that force and the people of Atlanta. And as I went out to Jonesboro, that city who ran my dad off the streets at 5 o'clock when he was a boy, elected me to be its first African-American chairman. And I can say one thing, I ran it with the greatest deal of honor and integrity I knew how. Had $20 million when I got there and left them with 40. So that was a pretty good investment, I think. But I think our representative for giving me this high honor. And I would say to you all, come join us, because we're not through yet. During that trip, I adopted 9 children, had 4 of my own. And I'm happy to report that I've raised a couple of millionaires and robed 5 doctors. My wife said to me, your children are going to hate you. And I said to her, they're going to be successful haters, because I kept their brain knocked up there where they belong. And our brevity is, okay, thank you, sir. Where's the water? Having said that, though, I am honored to be here, and I speak also to the memory of our previous speaker, Speaker Murphy, because he became a close friend, and I expect to be just as close to you, dear sir, as I was to him. Thanks to Calvin Smyrie, where my youngest boy was born to go on to American Idol fame. He's in New York and Philadelphia now on stage, and he's not writing home for money. So I would say to you this day that I am proud to stand here and to receive your honor and your accolades for a job well done. Thank you.
His daughter told me that I'm standing usually in the spot she stands, that way she can nudge him a little bit, but I stepped in for her.
Clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
These first 2 resolutions are invitation resolutions. They're being read for the first time today. The first resolution is a privileged resolution. Invitation being read for the first time today, referred to Committee on Rules. Resolution recognizing Kennesaw State University, inviting officials to appear before the House of Representatives. The following resolutions are privileged resolutions being read for the first time today for adoption. A resolution by Representative Drenner, the 85th, encouraging statewide participation in Green Apple Day of Service. Resolution by Representative Thomas, 56, recognizing March 9th, 2013, as Ghana Independence Day in Georgia. Resolution by Representative Weldon III, recognizing commending Heritage High School as a school of excellence and advanced placement honor school. Resolution by Representative Weldon III, recognizing commending Heritage High School 5-star dance team. Resolution by Representative Weldon, recognizing commending Heritage High School junior varsity dance team. Resolution by Representative Spencer, the 180th, recognizing commending Coach Jeff Herron on his superlative legacy as head coach, Camden County High School football team. Resolution by Representative Hamilton, 24, commending the Kids Chance of Georgia Incorporated, occasion of his 25th anniversary. Resolution by Representative Brooks of the 55th, recognizing commending Madge Doreen Owens on the occasion of her retirement. Resolution by Representative McCall, 33rd, recognizing Legislative Livestock Showdown. A resolution by Representative Wilkerson, 38, honoring Ms. Betty Gray and the 10th Annual Betty Gray Scholarship. Resolution by Representative Beasley Teague, 65th, recognizing commending Representative Simone Bell, resolution by Representative Kirby, the 114th, congratulating the Loganville Christian Academy varsity basketball team winning the 2013 Georgia Independent Schools Association AAA State Championship. Resolution by Representative Brooks, the 55th, honoring and recognizing Dorothy Grant Owens on her 85th birthday, and a resolution by Representative Tanner on the 9th, recognizing and commending Jeff Clymer on his retirement through the privileged resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none. The resolutions are adopted. The House will suspend for 10 minutes as we await the 24-hour rule for the budget to be considered. 10 minutes.
UCC Article 9, nothing that the insurance committee wants to deal with. I think that'll be larger. I think it needs to be larger. Thank you. No, Bill, I showed you yesterday, he's in the fires. I know. Sounds good to me. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. have arrived.
Clerk will ring the bell. We're back onto the rules calendar. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 106.
House Bill 106 by Representative Ralston, 7th. A bill to make and provide appropriations for the state fiscal year beginning July 1, 2013 and ending June 30, 2014. The bill having been before the House Committee on Appropriations, committee recommends the bill pass by way of a committee substitute. This bill is being read today for the third time.
House is in a posture of waiting for just a moment on the appropriations chair. The House is in recess again until the call of the chair. Should not be long. Just take a few minute break.
I'm just really looking forward to it.
So this is not the one I was just referencing. This is one honoring the president of the real back across England. The only thing I'm doing is I want to do one of the last meeting of the house to acknowledge them because when we come in town, it's just I think I'm just having fun with that. He's not in here right now. I know I'm just calling him. And on those, what's the process? We'll adopt them first reading, and then I can get Lake Count to get a first job from y'all's office. Yes, and I am saying, not knowledgeable, just saying.
And he's still a puppy dog.
Me too.
Just curious. Can we call for testimony from some of those kids? Bring the protein. There's two of them.
Busy day. So this is what
Let's go on that. These things,
whatever needs to happen. We need to wait for
let me see if I can get it. All right. Hey, Michael, just bring it down here. I'll get John to sign.
He said he was going to move the name.
Thank you, bud. You got me both times. Thank you.
When y'all tell me it's time to come here, then I'll
After we read it. Leila, how you doing?
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank y'all.
Clerk will read the bell. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, the Chair resolves the House into the Committee of the Whole House for the purpose of considering HB 106, the Appropriations Bill. The Chair appoints the gentleman of the 146th, Mr. O'Neill, as Chairman to preside over the Committee of the Whole House.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 116th, Mr. England, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I go through all these, we're going to have to take a break in the middle for me to go somewhere for just a minute. So, ladies and gentlemen, sorry for the delay. Speaker will come out and address something in a little bit, but I would just ask that as we begin that you would keep Chairman Powell and his family in your deepest prayers at this point. But the Speaker will come out and explain in a little bit, but we've just been visiting with him for a few minutes. Now, again, I apologize for the delay. But, you know, like I said the other day, sometimes family is more important than what we do up here, and today's one of those days. And I'm again, apologize for the delay, but just felt like it was something we needed to be with him for just a few minutes. Anyway, as we address House Bill 106, the fiscal year 14 budget, it will begin, of course, on July 1st of this year, and the revenue estimate for this year that the governor set is $19.8 billion. That's an increase of about $512 million, or about 2.65%, very modest increase over what the amended 13 that you gave final passage to last week was. The greatest portion of that growth will cover needs in education, which net about $268 million. Of that, the K-12 education spending will increase by $236 million, pre-K another $13.5, of which $12.9 million of that is specifically set to fund 10 more days of the school year in pre-K. Health and Human Services net an additional $197.8 million in the House version of HB 106. The Department of Community Health and its attached agencies will be adjusted by about $174.5 million, and behavioral health for about $17.7 million, and public health by about $4.6. In addition, there's nearly $10 million in new funding for juvenile justice reform and about $130 million to fund the state's pension obligations. Within House Bill 106, the governor proposed program changes in 3 particular areas: collapsing rail, transit, airport aid, and ports and waterways into one intermodal program, decentralizing the $25 million in central office expenditures in DOE and spreading those costs to the programs where their monies are actually spent, a recommendation that came from the zero-based budgeting process. And combining also as a recommendation was combining low-income Medicaid with age, blind, and disabled Medicaid for one benefits program called Medicaid. Your subcommittees have agreed to 2 of those changes, but are recommending for those programs in community health, which include Medicaid, that they remain separate for now. In addition, in the FY14 budget, There's also been several other zero-based budgeting process items that have been identified. This year was the first full year of that program, and as a result of that, 57 of the state's programs, including the entire Department of Education, underwent extensive ZBB analysis. The results are that some low-performing programs and non-essential positions are being eliminated, and as I previously mentioned, some of those program changes are being enacted. Just to give you a few of the major highlights in the House version, they include $13.4 million for the full restoration of the provider rate cuts in DCH. With the federal matching funds, that has a total impact to our providers of about $40 million. $4.8 million for a 3% rate increase for our out-of-home care providers in DCH, who provide room, board, and watchful oversight for foster children, many of those who are not able to be placed in traditional foster care setting because of extensive therapeutic needs they may have. We also have the recognition of $83.5 million generated through the QBE formula for the State Health Benefit Plan, which will mitigate potential increases proposed in the coming year for that program as well. About $41 million in motor fuel funds for roads and bridges, which includes $15 million in additional funds to LMIG, as well as $7.1 million for construction needs. And about $4.3 for year 2 of our 3-year commitment to provide law enforcement officers in DNR and GBI with salary adjustments to keep our talented, well-trained, and experienced personnel in state service with those agencies. Finally, a word about bonds. The governor has graciously left room, as he has the last couple of years, for $100 million to be added by the House and Senate to the bond package. We traditionally split those 50-50, and that allows us to address some of the priorities of this body. In addition, he has recognized the need for $21.8 million in equipment needs for construction projects that were underway that were not included in his recognition, and has authorized the funding of those items in this package as well. The final result is that 72% of the bonds in the House version are for education, higher education, and libraries. 20% are for economic development, of which includes $62.5 million for water projects and $50 million for the Ports Harbor Deepening Project. And the remaining amount, the largest portion, is about $41.5 million for public safety needs. At this point, I would be remiss, as I always try to do, in recognizing, if I didn't recognize our House budget staff, they're all got my back here on the front row, Martha and Christine and the whole bunch. As I said yesterday in the committee meeting, you don't understand until you work with these folks how dedicated they are, how much time they put in, and how selflessly that they do that, and the hours that they come in on a Friday, Saturday, or a Sunday, or stay late in the evening away from their families to help us complete this project. And it is quite an undertaking when you realize that the entire 10 million citizens of the state of Georgia are counting on what we do here. So I want to thank them, each and every one, for their help. And it goes without saying that I feel the same way about our subcommittee chairs and our committee as a whole. While the committee takes up almost half of the House, we've got about 82 members, I think, now on the Appropriations Committee. Each and every one of you at some point touched the budget, whether it's here today or whether it's during the process, as you come and address your needs locally to us. And I appreciate the patience that you have with us as we try to make everything balance out. But what we'll do right quick is walk through the tracking sheet documents you have on your desk. And I'll just kind of walk you through quickly doesn't work in this, but anyway, we'll walk through the tracking document so you can get an idea of some of the changes that we've made or some of the enhancements that we've made as we've gone through the process. Your first change you're going to notice is in Section 2, dealing with the House of Representatives. And it has been the custom in the past, and it continues to be, that as we ask our state agencies to take a 3% cut, the Speaker has asked that we in the House oblige and do the same. So you'll see a 3% reduction there on line 211. Moving on to Section 3, the joint offices of the General Assembly, you'll also notice the reductions there in 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. Section 4, audits and accounts. On 4.1.2, you'll notice a reduction in personal services and operating expenses. We'd actually looked at doing a 3% cut. They're only actually taking a 2% cut and leaving 1% in for some necessary computer upgrades that they need to have in place. Under Section 5, the Court of Appeals, under lines 5.1.6, we're restoring 2 of the 4 furlough days there and asking them to manage accordingly for the remainder of those. And then 5.1.7, we're eliminating some one-time funds that were used to replace some computers purchased in fiscal year 13 budget. Section 6, under the Judicial Council, in 6.1.1, we're reducing the funding for 1 position there and moving it over to the CJCC. You'll see that then roll back in later on. 6.3.1, they're not ready to roll out the e-filing initiative quite yet, so we're holding off on that. And then on 6.4.1, the training of judges, we're just curbing that expense back just a little bit at this time. 6.5.1 deals with the rural judicial districts. That's a pilot program that's out there running right now. We're currently holding it, continuing to hold it as a pilot program and not adding any new circuits at this point. 6.5.2 deals with an executive director position at the Council of Probate Judges. We're also asking that we hold off on that until we can reevaluate a little bit and see what the actual need is there. And then also on 6.5.3 is a 1% reduction under the Judicial Council, which is a roll forward of what we've done in the amended 13 budget as well. Section 7 under Juvenile Courts, again under the Council of Juvenile Court Judges, a 1% reduction as we did in the amended 13. Section 8, prosecuting attorneys. Under the Council of Superior Court Clerks, you'll see a small reduction on 8.1.1. Again, that's a 1% reduction. 8.2.1, there had been an ask for 25 additional assistant district attorneys. We're actually providing 12 of those at this point, and they're to be located in the districts of greatest need and given flexibility should they be needed in adjoining districts as well. 8.2.4, we're not annualizing that number there, so it was not needed. 8.2.7, we're adding the 1 ADA for the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit that is authorized by House Bill 451 that we passed last week. 8.3.1, they needed an increase there. However, Chairman Powell and his committee felt like it didn't need exactly what they were, or as much as they were asking for, based on what their projections were, so we've provided half of that increase. Section 9, Superior Courts, line 913, just reduction of funds of 1% there. 921 under administrative districts, a slight reduction based on projected needs there in what the add is. 931 has traditionally been the posture of the House and the Senate to protect the senior judgeships and put those into districts because of the accountability courts, of course, rolling out, but also a lot of courts have drug courts that they started on their own. And so we were saying to restore those funds there. 933 was an add of two law clerk positions. We're just saying not at this point in time. 934 were some pay adjustments. We're also saying not at this time. 936 deals with the Superior Court judgeship, again in the Chattahoochee Circuit. That judgeship will actually go into effect on January 1, so we're only providing 6 months worth of funding there. Section 10, Supreme Court. We are honoring an ask there by the Supreme Court for a floating attorney, and that will also start January 1. Section 11, State Accounting Office. What we're asking them to do right now is to hold that position open for 6 months. So again, that will be a January 1 of 2014 hire there. It's just something that we feel like that they can hold off on, and they've graciously agreed as well. Moving on to Section 12, to the DOAS. 12.1.2 deals with House Resolution 73. We passed last week a compensation resolution that provides the funding necessary to fulfill that. 12.6.1 on state purchasing. DOAS also handles purchasing for counties and cities. And so as they go out and do procurements and work on contracts, a lot of times what they'll need to do is have a little bit of money that they can roll over, and that's all we're doing here is just raising that cap by about $400,000 to allow that to happen. 12.11.2 is the Aviation Authority, And basically that money goes for the flight time now that we've sold the state aircraft, and what we're doing is the lease as necessary. And so what we're doing is providing at this point 400 hours. They've projected to use about 330 hours this year. Section 13, Department of Ag. You'll see two small additional reductions on line 1322 and line 1342. Those were just annualizations from the amended 13 budget. Line 1343, dealing with the gate cards or the ag tax exemption certificates. Commissioner Black came back and said that he felt his organization could do it for $550,000 instead of the $750,000 that had initially been asked for, so we have lowered that as well. No changes in section 14. Moving on to section 15, under adult developmental disabilities on 1521, we're just clarifying in the House language there that that is a one-time cut, and it's not anything that's going to be taken forward or cannot be taken in further years, so we're just clarifying that language there. 1524 is where OPB recognizes the FMAP match there, and what we've done is also spread that on through the rest of this agency, and you'll see that as well on lines 1548, 1561, 1572, 1593, and 1510-2. On section 15.7, child and adolescent development disabilities, we have added about $250,000 in state dollars there. That brings down a 1-to-1 federal match. Last year with that same ad, they were able to see about another 264 kids. Conservatively, that allows them to allocate another 200 positions, but probably will be able to serve more than that by the time it's all said and done. 1510.3 is just asking for an equalization proposal as it deals with grant and aid formula funding for behavioral health services statewide. There's a great disparity depending on where you're at in the state as to how much is being provided to those providers or how much is being paid. So we're asking for a study to be done because there has been an uptick in usage, especially in northwest Georgia, after the closure of the state hospital in Rome. Moving on to section 16, DCA. Another small reduction on 1621 for additional operational efficiencies that can be found there. 1612.1 is a small add back. There was an elimination of the funds in the governor's budget for the Georgia Rural Water Association. We feel like it's necessary for them to remain in business. They're the ones that can actually do some water testing for small communities and systems that can't afford to. So we're just saying let's keep their doors open and allow them to stay in business. 1641, I want to call out Chairman McCall, who has stepped off the floor, but also Chair Lady Houston, Chairman Burns, Chairman Roberts, and many others that have worked on this item. As the tobacco settlement money started flowing to the state about 13 years ago, some of those funds were to be used to allow agricultural communities to adjust to a new way of life, not growing tobacco anymore. We've not done a whole lot of that, but what we're actually doing here is putting a $5 million fund out of One Georgia into the Georgia Development Authority, who's also going to match that with another $5 million to start a new and beginning farmer program there, which is something that we do need to look at, with average age of farmers being well above about 67 or 68 years old in the state of Georgia right now. So that's what that ad is, or that change, language change. Section 17, dealing with the Department of Community Health. I threatened yesterday in the committee that I'd get Chairman Parrish to come up and explain this, but he chickened out on me there, so we'll walk through it. There's a lot of things going on the next 2 or 3 pages here, but I'll try to keep it as simple as I can. You'll notice an elimination of funds on 1714. That's for the Navigant report that was done, the study that was done a couple of years ago. It's not necessary to continue to fund it. 1715 deals with asking for some Section 1115 waivers under the Social Security Act, and we're just giving them permission there to go and ask for those waivers. Looking at 1724, let me back up. 1722, restoration of $25,000 to the Burn Center in Augusta there. 1724, deals with the FQHCs, or the Federally Qualified Health Centers, and there will be 2 added under this proposal in Dawson and Chatham counties. They'll also be picking up some of the hypertension work. If you remember, in the amended 13 budget, there was a cut that we restored dealing with hypertension. These folks have been gracious enough to pick up that work and become a medical home for those patients, so it's not going to be necessary to fund that item where you'll see it later in the budget, because they're going to pick up there and carry on forward. In the opening comments, I mentioned that the governor proposed rolling up age, blind, and disabled and low-income Medicaid into one program. That's done under 17.5, and what we're saying there and actually in agreement with them, is that we'll work over the summer to look at some of the needs in ABD and LIM and not do this combination or roll-up at this time. Looking at 17.64, that's the beginning of where we're replacing that 0.74 provider rate cut that had been built into the budget originally. That also occurs on 17.76 and 17.82 when you see that on your document. There were a couple other issues that had been brought to us in the original presentation from the governor, and that dealt with the consultation codes. And I'm sure probably some of your nursing homes and maybe some of your hospitals and doctors have talked a little bit about that to you. We chose that as a priority as well. And if you look at 17.65, that item also occurs on 17.77 and 17.83. We have restored 50% of that change in those codes costed right there, and we're hoping our friends across the hall will be able to help us with getting that other 50% restored as well. 17.67 does a change in the group repayment methodology. We're agreeing that that's okay to do, but the way we're presenting to do it is one that doesn't reduce Medicaid reimbursements to hospitals. It doesn't make that number decline. You'll also see that on 17.79 and 17.85 as well. 17.610, dealing with case care and disease management. There's actually, the governor had only reflected 1/4 of savings there. We felt like there could be more achieved, so we've actually taken that cut a little bit deeper. When you look at 17.614, that deals with growth in Medicaid, and what we've done there is true up that number a little bit closer to the actuals. As I described it to someone yesterday, it's when the governor starts working on this, it's September, October, November time range. They're kind of having to shoot with a shotgun. Fortunately or unfortunately, as we come along, everything kind of starts narrowing in, so we can take a rifle or a pistol approach and get a little bit closer to that number, and that's basically what we're doing there, is truing up those numbers. 17.615 deals with hospital cost settlements in 2012, another truing up item, and you'll also see that in 17.75 and 17.811. 17.616 and 17.618 deal with the single-use vials for cancer patients. There are about 147 drugs that fall into that category. It's much cheaper if a doctor can deliver these drugs in the office than it is if those patients actually have to be checked into a hospital or emergency room as an inpatient for that to happen there. So we're able to spend a little bit here, but the backside, the savings is a lot greater than if we continued on the practice we had. 17.617, the committee looked at that, and the independent care waiver slots, we've allowed for additional funding for about 28 of those slots. Right now, there are about 109 people on that waiting list, and we're just trying to chip away at that a little bit as we go. 17.619 deals with the FQHCs and the rural health centers or health clinics. As those folks come online, as we've put new ones in the budget every year, they come online at a set payment rate. Well, something that had been overlooked, I guess, through the years is that rate never changes. So if you came online in 2000, your payment rate stayed at that 2000 level. However, somebody that comes online in 2013 gets a higher payment rate and keeps that payment rate from this point forward. The floor had never been adjusted, so what we're doing here in 17.619, 17.718, and 17.82 is raising that floor and fixing that problem going from this point forward. 17.620 deals with qualified income trust. I know that several of you have expressed aggravation at that. And what we're doing is working with DCH to try to figure out a little bit better program there than what they're actually using right now to make it easier on patients and their families. 17621 is creating a source quality incentive program, and then this would actually reward the high-performing source programs, which are those that deal with nursing homes in the state. 7622 is one of 2 times that this is mentioned in the document, and it deals with the flexibility to spend money between low-income Medicaid and age blind and disabled. Currently, there's a 2% cap on how much can be moved, and we're raising that cap to about 10% to allow the flexibility that's needed there to handle and manage as they go forward. 17623 is basically a language add and talking still again about source. Moving forward on to low-income Medicaid, 1772 deals with not moving the low-income Medicaid into the one Medicaid item, so that's the change or difference there. Then when you look at 1774, that correlates into 39th week elective births, and what we've started doing, the state and DCH has started pushing those births on out to 40 weeks, because if you get to the 40th week, the child comes out a lot healthier, and thus there's a lot lower expenses dealing with breathing related issues, nutrition issues, and that sort of thing. In this past year alone, the number of elective deliveries fell to 14.8% from 16.1% in 2011, but that translates into large dollars on the back end there. $17.76 again is the rate cut restoration. 17.77 deals with the partial restoration there. 17.79 deals with what I talked to you about just a little bit earlier on grouper payments. And then moving on down to 17.715, hospital cost settlements, and that's a truing up item there. 17.716 again deals with the 39th or 40th week, babies born there, and just an additional savings we can take by pushing those births out just a little bit further. 17.717 deals with the hospital provider payment agreement, and what that does is just reconciles an overage that was paid through the past year on that. 17.718 again addresses the disparity on that floor issue dealing with FQHCs I mentioned earlier. 17.79 is the flex language I mentioned earlier. And then 17.72 is requesting an extension of Planning for Healthy Babies waiver, and all that's doing is authorizing them to extend the ask for that program to continue. It's a 90-10 match for those particular services. Peach Care under 17.8, again, the restoration of the provider cuts, partial restoration on the consultation codes, and the group repayment methodology change there. 17.811 is a truing up of funds, and 17.812 again FQHCs and the RHCs, the disparity in the base there, fixing that. 17.92 I'd mentioned in the opening comments about QBE and DOE and the SHBP. See how many other acronyms I can put into that line. But that was a House priority as well, to take and help our local school systems, because when they set their budget, and if there's a rate increase in the meantime, it catches them kind of off guard. And what we're trying to do here is be a little bit proactive on that to keep that from hitting them so hard on down the road just a little bit. 17.11.1, I've had several of you mention to me concern about the Southwest Georgia Consortium dealing with graduate medical education, and also the Gwinnett Medical Center piece. That simply moves it to Regents, and then Regents will be administering it basically the same way that it has been. 17.11.2 restores the 3% cut to GME. 17.11.3 puts in the second year of the Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine program at Houston Medical Center. And then 17.11.4 deals with the osteopathic program at Wellstar Health System and East Georgia Medical Center. 17.12.1 deals with Mercer. We've restored the 3% cut there to their physician workforce grants. 17.13.1, 2, and then 17.15.2 are all tied together when it deals with Morehouse. We've restored the cut to Morehouse, but what we've also done is move some of the undergraduate medical education dollars up there into the graduate program where it's eligible for an additional federal drawdown. So actually what it does is allow Morehouse to draw an additional $1.1 million down that they've not been able to draw down before. So we're kind of thankful we were able to figure that out, and they've worked with us on helping to figure that out, and so we're appreciative to their help there. 1741 deals with the state medical fair, and basically what that is the Georgia Alliance of Community Hospitals and Georgia Rural Health Association put on a job fair every year trying to lure doctors and physicians to rural areas. And of course, we're spending a lot of money with Mercer and Morehouse both to take and serve underserved areas. So we just feel like this is another piece of that puzzle to make that happen. Section 18, dealing with the Department of Corrections. Under 1861, you'll see the realization of some savings, about $1.5 million as it comes to the health program and corrections. That's been through a partnership with Georgia Regents University over the last 10 or 15 years, and has created some substantial savings by them going in and doing the work instead of us having to contract with outside firms, and we're just basically recognizing that savings there. 1881 and 1811-1 is basically just swapping money between two programs. It's not an actual cut, it's just a movement of funds from one program to another. Section 19, dealing with the Department of Defense, 1923 is military interstate compact billing, and we've trued up the actual billing amount there. You remember that was also in the amended 13 budget, that small reduction. Driver services, there are no changes. Section 21, dealing with DECAL, the early care and learning, and we had, what's his name here? Flat Stanley or whoever that was, I can't even remember his name. George. Anyway, you can tell I really get into the children's books. So anyway, Chairman Coleman was referring to this a little while ago in his presentation. Curious George, I'll get it right in a minute. And expanding the pre-K program back to 180 days, and we're just wanting to highlight and the governor's initiative there after the pain that everybody felt somewhat in doing the changes to HOPE a couple of years ago. It has certainly stabilized that whole lottery education piece, and that's allowed us to go back to that 180 days there. Moving on to Section 22, the Department of Economic Development. Looking at 2251, dealing with the Georgia Center for Oncology Research and Education, and it's otherwise known as CORE, and the Regional Cancer Coalitions. Those dollars right there are simply being moved to the Department of Public Health, and we'll show you that in just a few minutes when we get on down a little bit deeper into the document. 2274, dealing with tourism, a $2,500 ad there recognizing our commitment dealing with the compact between Georgia and Alabama with the historic Chattahoochee Commission. Section 23. I should make Chairman Dixon come down and do this because he made a bunch of squiggly notes on here, but anyway, just want to walk through DOE real quick with you. Under Ag Ed on 2311, dealing with extended day, extended year area teachers, young farmers, and youth camps, we've restored 1.5% of that 3% cut, and also made a language change just saying reduce funds in that area. That gives them the flexibility to move those within that program. 2336 and 2337. Two program restorations there that the committee felt like needed to be done. One deals with the American Association of Adaptive Sports Programs. The other one deals with the Superintendent's Leadership Program. Both of those we worked on in the amended budget and have come back and said we felt like those were necessary items to do. 23.4, dealing with charter schools. We've eliminated the $90,000 planning grant money. However, DOE does have someone on staff there now that actually does the planning for charter schools, so that's being taken care of. Nothing's getting dropped there. 2351, the restoration for communities and schools. That reduction would have touched 42 affiliates. 2364, dealing with SERS, the Discovery subscription with the Board of Regents. We're actually moving that money because it is part of Galileo. We're moving that over to the Board of Regents as well, so it's all there in one place. 23 9-2 with the Georgia Virtual School. We're just asking them at this point in time to hold off for 1 year on that course curriculum development that they had planned. Doesn't impact any current course offerings, and then we'll pick that back up again next year. 23-10-1, Georgia Youth Science and Technology. They're incredibly important in our STEM initiatives across the state. We're taking them actually out here and moving them over to Regents. They're located already with Kennesaw State University, and what we're doing is moving them over into Regents so the money goes directly to Kennesaw State. We are funding that, though, at a $50,000 level now instead of $144,000. Governor's Honors, 23-11-1, that's one that I'm sure many of you got emails and phone calls about as well. We've restored that cut. Moving on to 23-13-1, dealing with sparsity grants. Where's Representative Black at? He's somewhere back there. Anyway, Representative Black has taught me a lot about sparsity grants this year, and I thought I knew most everything there was to know, but he's taught me some more. But what we're doing, the governor proposed to roll that into QBE. That would, if in practicality sounds good, but if it were carried out would be very detrimental to a lot of these smaller systems that have very small student counts. So we're keeping that money segregated as sparsity there. 23-13-2 was just dealing with a name change for that program. Since sparsity is still going to be included into there, we're still keeping it as non-QBE formula programs. The same thing as 23-13-3 is the purpose change. We're saying no for the time being there. 23-13-4 deals with RTCs, and basically this is a new grant calculation for all 18 centers there. And then we've got Devereaux and Murphy Harps that are actually going to be adding some students this next coming year. And so what we're doing there is front loading it the way it needs to be done to make sure that those children are adequately served. Under nutrition, 23-14-2, dealing with school lunch program. That was initially a 5.8% cut. We've lowered that to a 3% cut there. Under 23-16-1, QBE equalization. That is actual fully funding QBE equalization at this point. It's just a true up of numbers again as we get closer into the next year. It allows us to get a more accurate number and a better handle on things. Local 5-meal share is just an adjustment, and you'll see that there. QBE, you'll see another true up under 23-18-1, 23-18-2. And then another true up on 23-18-3 dealing with the SB 10 or the special needs scholarships. That is fully funded. However, since we're changing the methodology on calculation of state health benefit plan from a percentage of payroll to an actual per member per month program, we were able to take a reduction there in that. And the same holds true for the math and science teachers on 23-18-4. 23-18-5, dealing with the ed tech centers. We're saying not to roll that into QBE at this point because they serve in tandem with the RESAs, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So you'll see where that zeroed out, we roll it back over into the RESAs on the next page, or on my next page anyway. 23-18-6 is where we're saying not to roll the sparsity grants in as well. 23-18-7 deals with charter systems and putting in the total funding for charter system grants now is about $4.1 million, and that's based on what we're doing with House Bill 283 this year. So we're just trying to get that number to where it needs to be. And again, 23-18-8, when you go back to community health a while ago, what I'd mentioned about the per member per month on local school systems, that's where language was reflected there. Under RESAs on 23-19-1, that's just we've taken that to a 1% reduction. 23-19-2 is leaving the ed tech centers in with the RESAs as well. Moving on down to state schools on 23-24-1, we're actually, as I've said before from the well, we're actually the Board of Education for the state schools, the schools for the deaf and blind. And what we've done there is add the training and experience step increases there. And under technology and career education, we've softened that cut as well from a 3% to 1.5% cut. Section 24, employees retirement, no changes. Section 25 Forestry Commission, a couple of slight restorations there. 25.3.1 under forestry protection. We restored half of the cut, and that helps maintain 2/3 of the support fire program or supplemental fire program. Those individuals logged over 23,000 hours last year. Next line on 25.3.2 deals with flight time, and that restores 1,000 hours of air patrol time, and they work with all 760 fire departments statewide. Moving on to section 26. And I'm trying as fast as I can to get through this. I know y'all are just riveted. Governor's Emergency Fund 2611. As you know, the adjustments we made in the Unemployment Trust Fund billings last year that have taken effect have allowed us to actually pay down what we'd borrowed from the federal government, that $700, $800 million that we'd borrowed. We've been able to actually pay it back a little bit quicker than what was originally thought, so we're taking and capturing the savings and interest there. Under the Governor's Office of Children and Families, we've I've got to say the Governor's Office and Katie Jo Ballard there have been great to work with. We've been working through some issues you've all been hearing a little bit about, and they're getting their hands around things there, and so we're just working closely with them. Chair Lady Dempsey has done yeoman's work there, and we're excited about some of the things we're going to get to, I think, eventually, and with their help and the Governor's help and the First Lady's help. But just wanted to point out a few things there. 2652, after some discussions, we felt like that dealing with the Juvenile Incentive Funding Grant Program actually was a better fit under CJCC, where we would put the accountability courts last year. They had implemented that so well there that this kind of falls under the same category, so we've asked that we move that to that particular area. 2655 deals with some funding grants that were timing out this year that were, according to our information, we're not going to be up for renewal next year. I will say at this point we may wind up needing to revisit that at some point, but that was based on the latest information we had as we started working on the budget and started sewing things up. 2656, 57, and 58 are basically some language that we've added in there to give some clarity as to what the General Assembly would kind of like to see there. And they've agreed that they're going to work with us on those items as well. And then a transfer of some funds from DHS on 2659 to allow more grant money to go out to the agencies and not to have to take overhead out of it for GOSIF. Moving on to the Professional Standards Commission, the Georgia PSC dealing with educators. 2681 is basically a language clarification there, just making sure that the professional development going forward relates to student achievement. And that was a finding that came out of the State Education Finance Study Commission over the last 2 years that Chairman Coleman and others have worked so hard on there. Moving on to Section 27, Department of Human Services. The $279,000 move I was talking about a few minutes ago, dealing with GOSIF, is noted on line 2795. 2796 is a one-time reduction of funds that were put in last year for Liberty County DFAC's office and some expenses needed for a move there. That's not needing to be in the continuation budget, so it's taken out. 271011 and 27111 all deal with the restoration of those elder services that had been proposed originally. We've restored those. That's elder and respite care too, I believe, there. So I know several of you had an interest in it, and we tried to accommodate as best we could, and we were able to fully restore those cuts. 2717.3 deals with out-of-home care. I mentioned in the opening comments about the 3% increase in rate adjustment there for the out-of-home care providers dealing with room, board, and watchful oversight. That directly relates to the RTCs, the residential treatment centers for those kids that can't be in traditional foster home or settings. Section 28, no changes, dealing with the Commissioner of Insurance. Section 29, GBI. 2922, and what we're doing there's some additional funds coming in from an increase in the fingerprint fees, And so we're recognizing that savings there. I skipped over Bureau Administration. We restored a contract for security services at the headquarters building there. Wound up that it was going to cost as much or more than what that's costing to put agents at the door. So we've pulled back from that and said it's more efficient to have the agents in the field doing stuff than it is checking folks as they come in the door. 2931 is the first of several times that you'll see the pay parity issue addressed throughout the document. 2932 eliminates some one-time funding for equipment that was purchased in fiscal year 13. 2933 is restoration with state funds for some federal funds that are going away, and that deals with about 3.5 positions there. 2944 deals with non-statutory travel. We have taken a cut, didn't go quite as deep as was initially proposed, but just asked them to be very mindful of that, just like all the other agencies are at this particular time. 2945 deals again with some personal services. And what we've done there is taken a reduction to meet their actual projected expenditures. 2946, again, dealing with pay parity issue. 2947 and 2948 is replacing some federal funds, again, that are going away for some agents. I think all total there were about 24 agents on those federal funds. We're actually putting in state funds for 12 of those positions, or about half of those agents. Under CJCC on 2953 is the move of the $5 million for the Juvenile Incentive Funding Grant Program over to the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. Section 30, Juvenile Justice. What we're asking for there on 30.1.2 deals with the non-secure detention monitoring systems that are out in the state. And what we're asking is to actually go ahead and switch over to all active GPS monitoring for all of those individuals. It allows us to pick up about a $700,000 savings there. Section 31, Department of Labor, no changes. Section 32, Department of Law, no changes. Section 33, Department of Natural Resources. Line 3335, again dealing with water, the Georgia Water Policy Center. Those are going to be some of the folks that are actually working with our regional water council, so we felt like it was important to keep them in existence for this point in time. Moving down to 3361, we've softened a little bit the operating expenses there for maintenance and operation within the park system. We've hammered them pretty well over the last several years. I think the agency as a whole has seen a reduction of 45 or 48%, so we're trying to soften up where we can just a little bit when we're going through the document now. 3362, as we've been doing the pay parity issues, we also realized that a lot of times we were dinging them on positions, and it just started seeming a little counterproductive, so we've gone back in and tried to rectify some of that, and you'll see that on 3362. 3364 again deals with the career ladder, second stage of that. 3391 deals with, there were 3 vacancies and 2 filled positions that were proposed to be eliminated under wildlife resources. What we've done is said go ahead and eliminate the 3 vacant but keep the 2 filled positions in hand. 3394 again deals with the career ladder, step increase there. Section 34, pardons and paroles, no changes. Section 35, State Properties Commission, no changes. Section 36, Public Defender Standards Council. If you'll look, there are 2 small adjustments there. 36.2.1 just annualizes the judgeships that were created in fiscal year 13. 36.2.2 deals with the new judgeship that we created with House Bill 451 the other day for the Chattahoochee Circuit, again starting January 1 of 2014. Section 37, Department of Public Health. Let me catch my breath. Get a drink of water. Okay, I mentioned to you a little while ago talking about the Georgia Center for Oncology Research and Education and the Regional Cancer Coalitions. I told you it would show back up here in just a few minutes, and it does. 3712 and 3715. That just gives a spread there under the adolescent and adult health promotion programs. On the 3715, there were 6 regional cancer coalitions. One closed last year in southeast Georgia. Basically what we're doing here is saying keep the amount the same, but spread that money out to all 5 now because they're picking up the slack where that one went away. 3721 deals with the hypertension outreach services I mentioned earlier too when I was talking about the FQHCs and the RHCs. And again, they're picking up this item. Actually, we'll be giving those individuals basically full medical care instead of just dealing with hypertension. So if there are other issues that are aggravating hypertension or causing hypertension, they're able to address those as a full service kind of agency. Under epidemiology on 3751, a slight reduction there. They still have a fairly sizable base to do the tuberculosis detection, and so they'll still be there, and a small add for the Georgia Poison Center contract as well. Moving on to 3773, we've been moving quite a few folks off of our hemophilia program into the pre-existing condition insurance plan, or PSIP as it's better known. However, the federal government shut that program to new people starting March the 2nd. So we know there's going to be an uptick in need based on that. So we've softened the cut there, but we think that if it doesn't get them completely through, then we'll address it again in the amended 14 when we get to that time, this time next year. Then if you'll look at 3711.2, that deals with the grant and aid formula that we started about 3 years ago for the public health departments in your local counties, and just trying to phase in that new grant and aid formula to equalize everyone out there. Then under 3714.2, the Georgia Trauma Care Network, just asking for an additional reduction in the contractual services there, and asking for them and the other agency that deals with trauma care to come to the table. We've got a few issues based on an audit that we need to kind of work through over the next year, and hopefully we'll have some agreements on that as we go forward next session. Public safety under section 38, a small decrease in 3851. Then you have under 3861, you'll see where there was going to be a reduction that's actually not going to happen yet. That program is not ready at Department of Revenue to move over to public safety yet. Public safety would be able to use some of those funds that come in from the fees and forfeitures and fines there to operate from. So we've asked DOR to be prepared and be ready when it comes to July 1 of 2014 to roll with that. So you'll see that item as we come back next year as well. Under Firefighters Training Standards and Training Council, 3891 deals with some online testing support, just putting an IT person there to help out with that on a part-time basis. Under 3811.3, still under post, you'll see where we've backfilled a cut there. There were no other funds available to replace state funds with, so we've taken and backfilled that. However, we did take a small 3% cut to personal services under 1311.5. If you'll drop on down then to 3812.4 and 3812.5, there's a plan in place to close the North Central Georgia Law Enforcement Training Academy, and with that closure, we realize a small savings, but also realize that the Dalton facility will actually have to pick up the pace up there. They're going to pick up more people coming in for training there, so we basically took the cost savings there and rolled it up to the Dalton facility. Section 39, dealing with PSC, what we've done is softened a cut there that deals with personal services. We've eliminated a couple of positions, left one position there, and then annualized it going forward. And then 3932 is again just a change in the purpose statement for utilities regulation, where we'd moved the transportation function of PSC to public safety last year. Section 40, Board of Regents. One down and 7 to go. Hopefully we don't get there. Under Ag Experiment Stations on 40.1, the 40.1.1, reduced funds for personal services, we softened that cut by about 25%. Then on 40.1.2, We had some areas, again, like we did last year, that some pests and diseases that are new to the area have come in, unfortunately, whether it be through the port, whether it be through tropical storms and hurricanes. But there've been a few things that have been identified. And one of those areas last year we worked on was peaches and blueberries. Well, we thought we could find a specialist that could do both. As they interviewed, they couldn't find a specialist that could do both. So part of the money has gone to take care of the blueberry position, but we need to then come around and hire the person to take care of the peaches as well. Last year in the bond package also, we funded the Food Product and Innovation and Commercialization Center down at the Griffin campus of UGA. It's also called Food PIC, excuse me. And they will be needing to hire a director there when it comes online, sometime probably the first of next year. We're also putting funds in for dairy heat stress specialist at Tifton, and then also for the Ted Dyer beef cattle animal scientist position up at the Calhoun Extension Bull Test Station there. Those are 4 areas that are part of the Chancellor's Economic Development Initiative, and we felt like that those were things that we need to look at. That is a B budget area. When you hear us talk about regents, a lot of times you'll hear about A budget and B budget. The things we're talking about right here deal with B budget areas. Same holds true for cooperative extension service. We're softening the cut there. The Enterprise Innovation Institute, we're actually moving to a 3% cut there that was submitted by the agency. The Forestry Cooperative Extension and Forestry Research lines there, we're actually softening those cuts. And then 40.7.1 and 2 deal with Georgia Archives being moved from the Secretary of State's office over to Regents, which a lot of us really feel like that's a great partnership, and what they'll be able to do with Clayton State, not only Clayton State, but all the Regents institutions with history and preservation there. I think it's just going to be a really neat and exciting thing to watch what they're going to be able to do there over the next several years. Moving on to Regent Central Office under 40.15.3. That's where the transfer from DOE comes into, transferring the SIRS Discovery subscription and Galileo from DOE to Regents. Looking at 40.18.6 and 18.7, dealing with Georgia Gwinnett College and their special funding initiative as an upstart. What we've done there is taken a cut, but we've also realized that there was a class that did not get full funding for in 2012. We were not able to fund enrollment growth in 2012. Well, unfortunately, at that point, Georgia Gwinnett had added an entire class, so they kind of got skipped double, if you understand what I'm saying. So we've recognized that as well there. 40.18.9 is a small contract with Carl Vinson Institute that we're putting in for some services there. 40.18.10 deals with Georgia Youth Science Technology centers that we talked about over in DOE. That's where it's being moved over to there. 40.18.11 was one-time funds for an eminent scholar in the 13 budget. They don't need to be annualized, so you see the reduction there. 40.20.1, I've had several of you, I didn't realize as many of you had an interest in vet medicine as what you did, but I heard from many of you. The vet teaching hospital has an agreement with Fort Valley State College, with Athens Technical School and Gwinnett Technical School, or colleges, with the vet tech training program there. They don't charge those students to come there for that program, and that elimination of the funds would have hit them and caused some consequences. So we've went back in, taken a small cut, but restored most of those funds. Moving on to GPTV, or GPB, excuse me. 40.22.1 deals with the Discovery Education contract. We've moved that from DOE also over here, and some related services that go with that. Just a tidbit, one of those things that that you might want to do a trivia game with somebody sometime about. Last year on the GPB website, 80,000 teachers downloaded content to use in their classrooms. That was content that included This Day in Georgia History, the Georgia History textbook program that they were able to roll out last year. We're going to see about getting loaded on every legislator's computer so you can actually look at it. But out of those 80,000 hits, or 80,000 teachers, there were 5.5 million hits and downloads from everything from kindergarten material all the way up through high school physics. So it has been a great thing that they've been able to accomplish on a very limited shoestring budget over there as it deals with education. Section 41, Department of Revenue. 41.3.1, dealing with forest land protection grants. What we've done there is actual truing up with fiscal year 13 numbers, is taking a small reduction. The fraud detection and prevention system that Department of Revenue started last year, we're putting in the money for 3 months of funding there, which basically is 3 to 4 months is what they need. But the return on investment there is astronomical when you realize the dollars in fraudulent refunds that had been going out that we had no way to catch. This system actually works and catches a lot of those things and keeps them from actually going out. 41.83 deals with the county printers and your tag and title offices. And what we're doing there is allowing them to use the fees that they collect then to take and turn around and purchase those printers. And then 41.84, we talked a little bit about it in public safety, and that's where we're not transferring that function over to public safety at this point in time. 41.11.2 is a reduction in personal services. There were actually about 70 plus vacancies over there in tax compliance. The governor realized 50 of those. We went on and took it to 70, and I think that still leaves several positions that are not filled at this point in time. So that's just not needed. Section 42, Secretary of State. Chairman Reinders and his office and committee have worked with the Secretary of State in realizing that many of you have called and talked to us about the wait times when it deals with licensure and everything with the professional licenses and the wait times on the telephone system there. Secretary of State has told us that he needs additional help there, and we're trying to move some things around to help him out with that. And by doing so, under office administration, you'll see a slightly deeper cut, and also under securities, you'll see a slightly deeper cut. And what we've done is move that money up into the program dealing with professional licensing board to help them with the call center employees and to add a little bit there. Dealing with what most of us know as the Ethics Commission on line 4291 and 4292. We'd given them some money last year for some IT upgrades. They basically paid that contract, but they also need some additional money to help maintain that contract going forward, so we've put that small ad in for that as well. Section 43, Soil and Water Conservation Commission. Under 4322, dealing with ag water supplies, what we've done is went back in and put that money back in. Those are water specialists who monitor the mobile irrigation systems, and we do need them to continue that work. And so we've put that money back in place. Section 44, dealing with Student Finance Commission. Made a small adjustment in the Excel program. That is your dual enrollment programs that I'm sure that most of all of your high schools are doing between high schools and technical colleges and some of your colleges and universities. That number sometimes is an elusive number, but we're working to get the right one there, and we think we're close, but may not be completely where we need to be. 4421 deals with engineering scholarship, and that's a slight add to the base based on the number of scholarships that are out there and needing to be fulfilled. 4414.1 is an item you may have gotten a few emails about, but as we go through this and explain it, I hope that you'll come away understanding a little bit better about what we've done here. We're talking about reducing that grant from the $700 level down to a $500 level. By doing that, it frees up about $6 million that I'll show you where we put it over in the technical college system of Georgia in the teaching program over there. When you run the numbers and look at all the things considered, when the HOPE grants were increased this year, and then you take this into effect as well, you're only looking at about a $46 per semester reduction. So I've seen an email or two that said that some folks' college careers were going to be thrown away because they were not going to be able to carry on because of the reduction here. Just want to tell you that that's not actually the case. When you average out tuitions, that these apply to, it only amounts to about 1.1% of the actual tuition. So I'll be glad to get you some further information on that, either myself or Chairman Earhart, if you need some further information there. Moving on to Section 45, TRS, no changes. Section 46, the technical college system. Under 4641, dealing with the teaching program under technical education. TCSG's kind of been caught in a quandary over the last few years that they've seen an astronomical climb in enrollment, but unfortunately the funding for TCSG lags about 2 years behind. So as as enrollment has fallen off this year, they still never really got caught up to where they needed to be to take care of the folks they still have. And so a couple of other things have formed to kind of make a perfect storm in a lot of ways that catches them in the tornado. And in doing that, we realized that when we lowered the grade point average on the HOPE grants that apply to TCSG from a 3.0 to a 2.0, that there were somewhere probably 8,000 to 9,000 additional students that the technical college system will have to deal with. And so we needed to soften this cut a little bit. So we've been able to do that with the $6 million we've moved over. Another one of those trivia notes that if you want to take and mess your friends up with one night playing Trivial Pursuit or something or other, 96% plus of the grads that come out of the technical college system are placed in jobs. The other sad thing when we're talking about the lines crossing or the growth and funding not catching up, the thing that kind of catches TCSG as well is that as SACS comes along and does reaccreditation, one of the things they look at is how many adjunct professors or what the percentage of adjunct professors at TCSG institutions are. And if they're over 50%, then that calls into question the accreditation. So what we're trying to do is get them back in line where I think there's 7 institutions this year, Mr. Chairman, that are up for accreditation visits. We're trying to get them back in fairly good shape when SACS comes around visiting. Moving on to Section 47. Under Airport Aid, 4712, you'll see an add back of $120,000 there. Chair Lady Houston likes airports, loves airports, so she wants to take care of them. And she's done that here. That $120,000 add back draws down an additional $2 million federal dollars. It's a 5% match from the state, 5% from local government. The rest of the 90% comes from the feds. Under 4742, construction admin, you'll see an add of $7.1 million there coming from motor fuels monies that were rolled, so we're able to grab those and put them into projects. These are things that you'll see happening in your districts there. 4782, dealing with LMIG, your local maintenance and improvement grants. We put $15 million in there as well. Those are things that you'll actually see dirt being moved, asphalt being laid to take care of. 4716.3, we also put a little bit of money in there, $3.6 million in there into an infrastructure bank dealing with community improvement districts. And for every dollar put in there, the CIDs match with an additional $9. So it gets a huge bang for the buck there as well. Section 48, dealing with Department of Veterans Services. See 2 minor changes there on 4832 and 4842. Those dealing with the 2 nursing homes for our veterans in Augusta and Milledgeville. And that's simply the recognition of the aid and attendance money that is now flowing. And again, I want to tip my hat to Representative Mary Margaret Oliver. She was instrumental in making this happen last year. And what that's going to do is allow the Veterans Services Department to increase the bed census at the nursing homes and also increase some of the patient services there at those nursing homes as well. So give her an attaboy or a pat on the back when you see her, because that's going to mean a lot to a lot of folks. Section 49, Workman's Comp, there are no changes there. Section 50, which if you're like me, when I was a freshman and sophomore here, the first section I flipped to in the budget when it was put on the desk was the bond section, so I'm probably not going to tell you anything you don't already know there. I do want to point out a few minor things though. In DOE, you'll see some adjustments there at 50.2.1 and 50.2.13, and those are based on the actual revised application numbers. And then you'll see some other ads down through there. 50.2.1.7 deals with every system, or excuse me, 60 systems in the state as they add vocational equipment. And then you'll see some other stuff dealing with state schools and some of the camps. The ad that I'd mentioned earlier, $21.8 million in equipment, that's headed under the Board of Regents system. You'll see the ads there. There are about 5 or 6 of those. You'll see some of the ads that we put in the House for Board of Regents. You'll also see something that Chairman Earhart and I are very proud of. It's something we started last year and did not realize what a backlog there'd been with local libraries with major repairs and renovations. That's roofs, heating and air systems, flooring, toilets, everything that a library uses every day. They've not had money to keep up or take care of over the last many years. So what we did there last year was put in some bond money to allow for some major repairs and renovations. That touches library systems across the state and every district. We've done that again this year, and also they had asked for some computer replacement, and we funded that in this bond section here. So there's $2 million in for computer replacement and $1.895 million in for the major repairs and renovations. And Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer some questions. I know there's some other things that are throughout the document I may not have hit on that I'll try to cover as well, but that pretty much wraps up what I'd planned to say anyway.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like you said, you just really rushed through that. And I'm pretty inspired by all that new knowledge. And would the gentleman yield for some questions?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to.
The chair recognizes Representative Carter of the 175th for a question.
Does the gentleman yield?
To my friend from Valdosta, most certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it not true that in this budget we have not only kept the $2.6 million in funding for the sparsity grant for our small systems, but also we have directed the State Department of Education to study the grant program so we can determine the best course of action relative to sparsity grants?
The gentlelady knows of what she speaks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oops. Chair recognizes Representative Rogers of the 29th for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for all the work you all have done, and you may know or may not know, I know the TEG is vitally important to a lot of the private colleges, and Brenau University, as you know, is in the heart of the 29th district. As the bill travels, I hope we can work to better what we're doing in the House, and I think you understand that, and you and I have spoken about that. So
yes, sir. I understand your concerns.
Good.
Certainly
Thank
do.
you.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Thomas of the 56th District for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just trying to know a little bit about the general obligation debt sinking fund. And on page number 67, is it not true under 50.21.2 and 50.21.3, is it not true that I'd like to understand what type of bond is that? And it says statewide low wealth.
Okay, that deals with the Department of Education. Those are construction bonds for local school systems. And there's several different programs in the capital outlay program. You've got regular statewide, regular advanced, low wealth systems, and then additional project-specific low wealth systems that all fall into there. And they're different categories based on what the per student wealth is and where they fall into that. Everybody basically falls into regular statewide. Everybody is also additionally available to go into regular advanced if they're doing a large project, a large high school, for instance, and they need to go ahead and draw down some additional future year earnings, then they can do that under regular advanced as well. And when you deal with low wealth systems, it's just basically referring to those systems where the student wealth In other words, you take the tax digest for the county. It's basically a lot along the same lines as how equalization is funded when we talk about equalization funding. You take the tax digest for the county, divide it by the number of students in that county, and that gives you what your student wealth is per county. And so there's some that fall below a certain line. I can't call off the top of my head what that line is right now, but that's the ones that fall under that low wealth category.
Does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not true that I would like to know the amount of money in the brain injury trust fund? What's the total amount?
Hold on just a second. It should be on the front. 1.98 million.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Dixon in the 6th for a question.
Will my chairman yield?
No, sir, but go ahead.
Is it not true that in this budget that we have worked to help not only students who are at high risk, but also students who have exhibited outstanding educational achievement by eliminating any additional cuts to the Popular Communities and Schools programs?
Yes,
and
sir.
also the Governor's Honors Program?
Yes, sir. Certainly have. Thank you for your work on that, too.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Maxwell of the 17th for a question.
Thank you, my friend. Mr. Gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate also the hard work that you and the committee have put into this year, and I just got a question for you. Is it not true that in this budget, for the first time in a number of years, that we fully funded the current equalization formula that you were just talking about, and that does assist those systems whose wealth per student is below the state average?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you doing that, sir.
Well, I'm just tickled that the governor was able to bring that his budget as he rolled it out. We certainly agree with it and just appreciate his leadership on that.
Chair recognizes Chairman Houston of the 170th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is it not true that in this budget we were able to restore some of the funding to the forestry department, and they've had to respond to over 2,000 fires this year all over the state?
The gentlelady knows well of what she speaks.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parrish of the 158th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. With the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the excellent job and explanation you did, and I know we went through a lot of things there, and there's many things in there important, but I just have a couple of questions, if you will yield, please.
Yes, sir.
Under the Public Health Department, is it not true that the $1.5 million that we are asking to be added in this budget will affect virtually every county health department in this state in a very positive way as we phase in this grant and aid formula to the departments?
Yes, sir. And the majority party chair lady was instrumental in that initially 3 years ago, as well as yourself and Chairman Chanel, in getting that worked out. And I'm just glad that we can continue forward on that funding.
Thank you. Would you yield for one more question?
Yes, sir.
Under our graduate medical education, isn't it true that by restoring some of these proposed cuts in there, that what we're really doing is this will allow us to better recruit and retain physicians in this state, which will help to us with the physician shortage that we face, and be able to take care of old folks like me when we call the doctors. We want to make sure there's somebody there to look after us.
Yes, sir, that is extremely true, and we all know, and it's replicated thousands of times yearly, that where a doctor does his residency is where he's more than likely going to locate, and we want to bring them to Georgia. We've got a doctor shortage here, and we want them here practicing in the state of Georgia, and we need to do all we can to get them here and keep them here.
One final question, please.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it also true that by us recommending a restoration of about $13.4 million in state funds, that we should be able to draw down about $40 million totally, which will basically eliminate the proposed cuts to our providers across this state, and there again encourage these providers to participate in our Medicaid program and provide the service that we need for our citizens?
Yes, sir, you know of what you speak.
Chair recognizes Representative Buckner of the 137th for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
On page 67, where you talk about the 328 school buses that we are putting funding, is it not true that I would sincerely hope that we would support a local business, Bluebird Bus Company, who has received awards for national safety for school buses, instead of buying North Carolina Thomas buses with that money?
Well, as you know as well as I do, it is a competitive bid process, so I just hope they can sharpen their pencil and get there with them.
Chair recognizes Representative Kidd of the 145th for a question.
My bearded friend, you for a question?
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions if I may. The first one is that you show $14 million of money being reimbursed to our counties, jails for housing state prisoners. Or do we separate out the type of prisoner? Is it a mental health prisoner, is it an alcohol prisoner, or just a felony prisoner?
You're talking about the ones that are being put in county or kept in county jails?
Yes, sir.
The jail subsidy is just a flat rate per prisoner, and typically a lot of times that's where they're just holding them pre-trial and are either shortly after trial until we can work them into the prison system.
For the yield?
Yes, sir.
I know a lot of us have probably heard from our local sheriffs, not about House Bill 1, but also about the fact that they are the mental health treatment facilities in the state now as the county jails, because there's no place to house them. Is it more efficient to put them in the county jails like they are now, or would it be more efficient to treat them in a facility that's capable of treating them?
Well, the end goal is, of course, to get state prisoners in state facilities, and that's what's constantly being worked on. Sometimes you just get a little behind the curve there, as you well understand. And another one of those little trivial pursuit issues, do you know what the largest mental health facility in the United States is today? The LA County Jail. They serve more mental health patients than anywhere else in the country.
I agree. I hope that trend shifts. Another question, if you will, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
In the big document on page 40, it shows roughly $200 million of health care in the Department of Corrections. I believe that $200 million is to go to hospitals throughout the state for treating Department of Corrections inmates that need medical care.
It basically goes for all the health care, and that's what I was mentioning a while ago. Some of the savings we've been able to realize starting recently dealing with Georgia Regents University and what they've been able to do with the Department of Corrections partnering there. We've been able to start shaving that down some and start realizing some savings there as well.
One last question for you, please, sir.
Yes, sir.
Was a comment about that. I know last year was $191 million. This year is $200 million for the hospitalization. But for every inmate that's hospitalized, the law requires 2 guards to be with them 24/7. And obviously, if an inmate has to be there overnight for a night or two, it really takes 3 guards for shift change and so forth. To my calculations, there were just over 6,000 bed nights that these prisoners were in the hospitals, which would result in roughly about 15,000 guard days. Does that $200 million show the payment of those 15,000 guard days, or that showed somewhere else?
That's just the medical expenses. The guard days, the guards are basically on staff anyway, so you're going to see that spread everywhere in the expense of the guards.
My very last one, if I'm and I'll be through, I promise.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Do you think it'd be more cost efficient to find a way to hospitalize and treat these prisoners and not have to use these 15,000 guards down the road somewhere?
There's always ways to find economies of scale, certainly. I'm not saying that the system's perfect right now, but I will tell you that I feel like today that we're doing it a lot better than we were just a few years ago, and I feel fairly confident in our commissioner there and his staff that we're going to get yet a better handle on that in years going forward. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Bentley of the 139th for the purpose of asking a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for your work on this budget. Over a year ago, several pre-release centers across the state was closed and one being in my home county, Taylor County. The city of Butler lost its largest water customer behind the closing of that pre-release center. Does this budget cause for any funding to reopen any of those pre-release centers that were closed over a year ago?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that there's some bond money in to do a little bit of work on some YDCs, but as far as opening any of the pre-release centers back up, I'm not aware of it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
Chair recognizes Representative Howard of the 124th District. Question.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Will the gentleman yield?
Well, let me find you first. There you go. I got you. Yes, sir.
Can you go to section 2318.8 on the state health benefit piece and help me understand, make sure I'm clear on something here. I think in the FY13 budget there was about that's an increase from $949 to about $1,1639 in the proposed budget here, which is about a $71 difference, versus in the FY13 it was about a $25 difference, which is putting a little more strain. That difference is going to affect our local county schools as to where they would get their funding from too.
That's what we're doing here, is trying to preempt it from hitting the local systems.
Okay.
That's, if you'll notice, go back into community health. There's an item there. I'll try to give you.
What number would that be?
1792. That number there is what I'd mentioned a while ago, that reflects also in DOE that we're trying to offset any potential future increases there, because it does catch the local departments of education kind of off guard sometimes with a mid-year increase, and we're trying to preempt that a little bit here in the document.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Chair recognizes Representative Dempsey of the 13th for a question.
Thank you. Does my chairman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the hard work that I have actually seen you put into this budget. And
Thank
members,
you for yours.
You cannot even imagine. Thank you so much. Today, is it not true that today more than 2,000 foster children with very specific needs cannot reside in a traditional foster home setting, and that this budget actually, for the first time in 10 years, the rate increase that is there for out-of-home care services will help us address the massive increases for need and utilization of these services?
Yes, ma'am, you're very correct. It certainly does.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your help.
Chair recognizes Chairman Coleman of the 97th for a question.
May have to wake him up first. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Gentleman yield.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that we want to thank Representative Thomas, Representative Dixon, and Representative Maxwell for pointing out some of the great funding that we did for education in the budget?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it further true that not only have we completely funded equalization for the first time in a long time, and isn't it also true that we have taken care of the sparsity grant? But isn't it true that we're really proud that the Educational Finance Study Commission, all of their recommendations like nurses, the first year funding of the counseling, were all included in this year's budget? Is that not true?
Technology as well, yes, sir.
And isn't it further true this is probably the greatest year we've had in many years for funding of education in Georgia?
I would like to think so, yes, sir. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'll yield for about one or two more. Or I can sit down, it doesn't matter.
Chair recognizes Representative Valerie Clark of the 101st for a question, and there's only two after that. If
Okay, we'll go on and try to, if nobody else will push their button, we'll try to get all three then.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I would not imagine you would know every bond, but on page 69, is it not true, second from the bottom,
Give me a line number.
it is 50.2.1.78 on page 69, second from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, out of all those bonds, you may not know this answer, but can you tell me possibly what the $3 million in 20-year bonds for facility improvements, what that may be for?
Yes, ma'am. Georgia Building Authority is the entity that takes care of this building, the other buildings surrounding Capitol Square, number 2 Peachtree right over here. And what they're charged with doing is keeping these buildings in functioning condition. So it deals with replacing HVAC systems, it deals with major repairs and renovations to the buildings and everything, and that's what that $3 million goes toward.
Thank you so much, and thank you again
Yes,
for your
ma'am.
hard work.
Chair recognizes Chairman Martin of the 49th to your right for a question.
Chairman, you yield?
Yes, sir.
I'm in the bond documents, but on page 70, bond 50.2.1.96, bond number 96. The House changed language in that $11.75 million bond from infrastructure improvements to the College Hall of Fame to just infrastructure improvements. What specifically were we trying to address with that language change?
It's dealing with a parking deck that will be used for the World Congress Center, where the parking lot's going to be removed for that facility to be located there. And then this one will be built in its place, and then the revenue will be used from that parking deck to repay this note.
Okay, I just didn't know, if Chairman, further yield?
Yes, sir.
Just the House deleted language related to the College Football Hall of Fame.
Because this is basically dealing, it was a misnomer, it's basically dealing with the parking deck. It has nothing to do with the College Football Hall of Fame. Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman Reinders to your far right for what appears to be the final question.
Thank you.
He's usually way to the right. Yes, sir.
Thank you for the compliment, Mr. Chairman. And I also, on a personal level, like Chairwoman Dempsey, thank you for the personal work that you put into it, and especially those 6:30 a.m. meetings.
I know you like those.
But on a serious note, sincerely, we've heard from our constituents, the professionals out there that have talked about getting their licensing. Is it not true that this body rolled up its sleeve, passed 2 meaningful bills to try to take some of that pressure off by looking at the mechanism, and really, under your leadership, take the lead by putting some resources in the call center to try to alleviate the pressure and be responsible to the people of Georgia? Is that not true, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
And I thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you for helping us with that. Mr. Chairman, if that's all the questions, I will yield the will.
We may can come up with some more. It seems
No,
like you got some water left there. If you,
I'm good where I'm at.
Well, let me wait till you return to your seat, and I'll recognize you for a motion.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Chairman England for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that House Bill 106 do pass by committee substitute.
We have a motion that House Bill 106 do pass by committee substitute. The chair now recognizes Chairman Butch Parrish for a second to that motion. We have a motion and a second that House Bill 106 by committee substitute do pass. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, like sign. The ayes clearly have it. Chair recognizes Mr. England.
Mr. Chairman, as chair of the Committee of the Whole House, you are instructed to report the action of the Committee of the Whole House to the House.
What purpose does the majority leader rise?
Mr. Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House has had under consideration House Bill 106 and has instructed me, as its chairman, to report the same back to the House with a recommendation that House Bill 106 do pass by committee substitute.
The Majority Leader of the House has reported, as the chairman of the Committee of the Whole House, that the report has been has been made and is now received. The Committee of the Whole House has had under consideration House Bill 106 and has reported the same back to the House with a recommendation that House Bill 106 do pass by committee substitute. The Committee of the Whole House is dissolved. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Bill 106? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 106 will vote yes. All those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Yes, and Bill Riley knows. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines on the passage of House Bill 106. The ayes are 159, the nays are 15. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. And while we have them all here, let's give a great big shout out to a very outstanding House Budget Office for all of the good work they do. I know that this past Sunday was the prettiest weekend day we've had all year, and they were here working. Had us here working. What purpose does Chairman England rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move for the immediate transmittal of House Bill 106 to the Senate.
The chairman of the Appropriations Committee has moved that House Bill 106 be immediately transmitted to the Georgia State Senate. Is there objection? The chair hears none, and it is on its way. What purpose does Chairman Jacobs rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move that Senate Bill 185 be withdrawn from the Committee of Insurance and transferred to Judiciary. I've conferred with both committee chairs, and they are in agreement.
Clerk will read the caption.
Senate Bill 185 by Senator Stone, 23rd, a bill being entitled Act Amendment Title 11 relating to secured transactions.
On the motion of the gentleman that Senate Bill 185 be withdrawn from the Insurance Committee and recommitted to the Judiciary Committee, is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. What purpose does Representative Waits rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make a motion that HB 306 be moved from the Transportation Committee to intergovernmental. Both chairmen are in agreement.
Clerk will read the caption.
House Bill 360 by Representative Waits, the 60th, bill to be entitled Act to establish the Altamaha-Piedmont Rail Authority.
On the motion of the lady that House Bill 306 be moved, transferred from the Transportation Committee to Intergovernmental Coordination, is there objection? Chair hears none, and it is so ordered. If you have signed up for an announcement, Please make your way down to the front. House will continue to be in order, though, till we get through with the announcements. Chair recognizes Chairman Chanel for an announcement.
The House Ways and Means Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment. House Ways and Means full committee meeting immediately upon adjournment.
Chair recognizes Chairman Yates for an announcement.
The Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee will meet immediately upon adjournment. Room 415 LOB will take up Senate Bill 76.
Chair recognizes Chairman Coleman for an announcement.
Mr. Speaker, the Education Committee will meet immediately after adjournment in 506 CLOB. Entire Education Committee, 506 CLOB.
Okay. Chair recognizes Chairman Chanel for a further announcement.
I actually asked him if he would say this. I forgot to tell you the room number of the Ways and Means Committee, 606 CLOB.
Chair recognizes Chairman Rice for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Legislative Fellowship will meet tomorrow morning at 7:15 and 107. It might be a good day to be there.
Chair recognizes Representative Sheila Jones for an announcement.
There will be a hearing with SACS today, sponsored by GLBC in the Capitol Room 403. A hearing with SACS at this time.
Chair recognizes Representative Flood for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Democratic Caucus will meet for a brief but very important meeting immediately upon adjournment in room 230 downstairs. Thank you.
Chair would like to announce that today's a very, very special day for one of our members. To wish everybody a happy, everybody in here join me and wish a happy birthday to Representative Ronnie Mabra, excuse me. House will come to order, please. Chair recognizes the Speaker of the House, Speaker Ralston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many of you, after you've been here any time at all, come to agree, I think, with the feeling that this House becomes like a family. And when some of us hurt, we all hurt. And many of you know that for the past few days, beginning Friday, that the daughter of one of our members, Jessica Powell, Chairman Jay Powell's daughter has been in very, very critical condition. And so many of you, I'm sure like me, have hurt. I came here this afternoon to tell you that at 5 o'clock this afternoon, Jess is going to undergo very, very extensive surgery here at Emory Hospital in Atlanta. And, you know, we spend a lot of time here, and we think what we do is really important. But it sort of refocuses on us on what truly is important. And so I'm just here this afternoon to let all of you know her condition is serious. And I met with Jay earlier this afternoon, and I can't imagine that kind of pain. So would y'all join with me as we depart today for a moment of silence, and when we adjourn, I hope that you will join with me as we continue throughout the evening to keep Jess Powell in our prayers and her family. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Why does the majority whip rise?
Speaker, on that very somber note, I move that this House adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, March 13th, 2013.
Whip is moved that this House now adjourn until 10 a.m. tomorrow morning, March 13th, 2013. All in favor of that motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. The ayes clearly have it. We're now adjourned.